When the day breaks and the first light touches the earth, it does not ask us if we are ready. It simply arrives, steadfast, consistent, without permission. So too must we learn to meet the morning, with calm, with courage, and with clarity. For the morning does not belong to those who sleep through its promise. It belongs to those who rise with purpose, who claim that sacred first hour as their own. Too often, we allow the day to begin before we are truly awake. Not just awake in body, but awake in spirit. We reach for our devices before we reach for our thoughts. We react before we reflect. And in doing so, we allow the anxiety of the world to be the first voice we hear. But the day, this gift, was never meant to be handed over to worry. It was meant to be built, shaped, and directed by your own quiet resolve. There is great power in beginning the morning with intention. Not as a wish, but as a decision to be grounded, to know where you stand before the noise of the world attempts to move you. A decision to own the space between waking and doing, between silence and speech. That space, though small in minutes, is vast in meaning. It is where the soul returns to itself and reminds you who you are before the burdens of who you think you must be. We must not allow that time to slip from us. A person who greets the morning without direction is like a ship setting sail without a compass. No matter how strong the vessel, without direction it drifts, and life, when left to drift, rarely carries us to places of peace. It takes us instead to shores of doubt, of confusion, and unrest. But when we rise with intention, with a clear sense of how we will show up to the world, we do not drift, we direct. This does not require perfection. It does not require a flawless plan. It requires presence. It requires a quiet commitment to check in with yourself before you check in with the world. Perhaps it is a deep breath before the feet touch the ground. Perhaps it is a moment of stillness, of prayer, of reflection. Maybe it is the simple act of saying, today I choose peace. Today I choose strength. These words may seem small, but they carry great weight because they come before the world has had a chance to shape your narrative. Some will say they do not have time, but time is not the enemy. Distraction is. We find time for what we believe is important, and if we cannot find 5 minutes to center ourselves, then we have already surrendered to a pace that does not serve us. The truth is, you do not need an hour to take command of your morning. You need sincerity. You need honesty with yourself. You need to believe that the tone of your day should be set by your values, not your fears. I have seen people begin their mornings in hardship, with little but the rising sun and their breath, and yet, with dignity and resolve, they walked into the day not as victims of their circumstances, but as authors of their response. That, my friends, is intention. That is the power of claiming your morning. There is something sacred in the beginning of each day. It is not a repeat of yesterday. It is not a debt to be repaid. It is a chance, a new chapter, waiting to be written. Let us not waste that gift by filling it with the noise of worry. Let us meet the dawn with the discipline of the Spirit. Let us look to the morning not as a burden, but as a beginning, because the one who masters the morning does not just change their day. They change their life, and when enough of us do that, when enough of us stop feeding anxiety and start feeding intention, we do not just heal ourselves, we begin to heal the world. Let the day hear your voice before it hears your fear. Fear is a quiet intruder. It does not always arrive with noise or drama. It often slips in through silence, through the still spaces where our thoughts are most vulnerable, and once it finds its place, it grows. It grows through doubt, through imagined outcomes, through whispers of what if, but we are not here to be ruled by fear. We are here to walk through it with steady hearts and clear minds, and that, my friends, is where discipline becomes our greatest ally. There are those who believe discipline is harsh, that it is a cold and rigid thing. But I tell you, it is the opposite. Discipline, when born from self-respect, is a kindness. It is a structure we build not to restrict ourselves, but to protect what is most sacred within us, our peace, our focus, our sense of worth. In a world that pulls us in every direction, discipline is the quiet force that calls us back to center. Anxiety is not always loud. Sometimes it feels like restlessness. Sometimes it feels like fatigue with no name. It arrives when we have too many choices, too many voices, too many pieces of life asking for our attention all at once. And without a rhythm, without some kind of order, we are left wide open to it. This is why routine matters, not just to keep time, but to reclaim it, to take the scattered moments of a morning and bring them into alignment with who we want to be. Think of the body in winter, how it shivers when cold. That shivering is not weakness. It is a mechanism of protection. In the same way, our minds shiver when overwhelmed. The discipline of routine is like a warm coat for the soul. It is a way of saying to yourself, I may not be able to control everything outside, but I will not allow chaos to live inside me. It is not about perfection. It is about consistency. It is about waking each day and doing the simple things that strengthen the foundation of your being. Waking at the same time, drinking water, sitting with your thoughts, moving your body, taking 10 minutes to write down your goals or your prayers. These are not grand acts, but they are powerful. Because they tell your fear, asterisk, you are not in charge here. Asterisk, when you disarm fear with discipline, you begin to see the difference between what is urgent and what is important. Urgency makes you react. Importance makes you reflect. Fear demands speed. Discipline brings stillness, and in that stillness you can see clearly. You can hear your own voice, and that voice, once centered, is stronger than any anxiety that tries to take its place. I have seen people go through storms that would shake the strongest of souls, but they kept a routine, not because the routine solved everything, but because it reminded them that they still had power even in pain. They got up, they washed their face, they took one small step and then another. That is the work of discipline, not to escape the storm, but to walk through it with intention. We live in a time where distraction is always within reach. One notification, one headline, one message, and we are pulled away from ourselves. Discipline is the resistance to that pull. It is the choice to pause before reacting, to breathe before speaking, to act out of value instead of emotion. And when you make that choice day after day, you are not just avoiding anxiety, you are replacing it with self-trust, with focus, with strength. There will always be reasons to fear, but there will also always be reasons to rise. The question is not whether life will test us, it will. The question is whether we will show up ready, not with every answer, but with every intention, and discipline is what makes that possible. Not as a punishment, but as a promise. A promise we keep with ourselves to live from a place of purpose. So the next time fear tries to enter your day, ask yourself, asterisk, what have I built within myself to face it? Asterisk, and if the answer is discipline, if the answer is a routine that grounds you, a practice that strengthens you, then fear will have no place to settle. It may knock, but it will not stay. Let the strength of your discipline speak louder than the voice of your fear. Before the world speaks, we must learn to listen, not to the noise outside, but to the voice within. That quiet voice, often drowned by deadlines, duties, and demands, is the keeper of our truth. It knows not just who we are, but what we carry. And it is only through reflection, through deliberate moments of pause, that we come into contact with that part of ourselves that anxiety cannot touch. The problem is not that life is fast. The problem is that we forget to slow down. We rush from one task to the next, our thoughts racing before our feet even leave the bed. We are conditioned to act before we think, to perform before we feel, to answer every call except the one coming from within. But I tell you, that is the most important call you will ever answer. Because when you sit with yourself in stillness, even for a few moments, you begin to see the roots beneath the surface, the worries, the hopes, the weariness, and the quiet strength. Reflection is not indulgence. It is responsibility. A person who never stops to reflect is like a traveler who never checks the map. You may be moving, yes, but are you moving in the direction that honors your peace, your purpose? It is only in silence that you can answer that question honestly, and it is only in stillness that you can hear what fear tries to hide from you, that you are not lost, you are just busy, and being busy is not the same as being fulfilled. Some people fear silence because they think it will expose their weaknesses. But silence is not a mirror, it is a window. It shows you not only your burdens, but also your capacity to carry them. It reminds you that pain is not permanent, that worry is not truth, and that thoughts are not command. They are visitors, and you get to decide which ones stay. Anxiety thrives in noise. It feeds on clutter, both physical and emotional. That is why taking a few minutes each morning to reflect can be so powerful. It is like clearing a fogged window. You begin to see again. You begin to choose again. Perhaps you sit quietly with your breath. Perhaps you write in a journal, not to impress, but to understand. Or maybe you speak out loud the things you are grateful for, so your heart remembers it is not only carrying weight, but also light. In reflection, you reclaim your narrative. You stop being a passenger in your own life and become the author once more. You begin to recognize that not every thought deserves your belief. Not every fear deserves your attention, and not every feeling needs to be acted upon. When you build this habit of self-inquiry, you stop being ruled by reaction. You start leading with intention. There is no perfect way to reflect. There is only the honest way. What matters is that you give yourself permission to pause, to ask, asterisk, how am I today? Asterisk, not asterisk, how should I be asterisk? Not asterisk, how do others want me to be asterisk? But asterisk, how am I truly? Asterisk, that question alone, asked with sincerity, has the power to transform the day ahead. Because from that answer, you can move with compassion. You can adjust your pace, your tone, your focus. You can forgive yourself if you need to. You can refocus your energy if you must. In this way, reflection becomes not just a habit, but a form of strength. The kind of strength that is not loud, but enduring. The kind that does not need to prove itself, because it knows itself. And when you know yourself, your values, your wounds, your dreams, then no storm can confuse you for long. You may be shaken, yes, but not shattered, because you have already looked within, and what you found was not weakness, but wisdom. We are living in a time where many people feel unseen, even by themselves. Let us change that. Let us be the generation that makes self-awareness as valuable as success. Let us teach our children that knowing their hearts is as powerful as knowing the headlines. Let us wake each day with the courage to look inward before we look outward. The world will always have something to say, but your peace begins with the conversation you have with yourself. Let it be honest, let it be kind, and let it be the first voice you trust each day. Every morning we are offered a choice, not just in what we do, but in what we believe. That moment, when the light touches the sky and the day unfolds before us, is more than routine. It is an invitation. An invitation to decide what will guide us, the noise of fear or the voice of hope. The difference between the two is not always volume. Sometimes fear shouts, but other times it whispers. It speaks through hesitation, through cynicism, through that quiet sense that maybe today won't be any different. But hope, true hope, is not naive, it is courageous. It looks at the uncertainty ahead and chooses to walk anyway. There are people who believe hope is weakness, that it is a soft thing, a luxury reserved for those who haven't yet suffered. But those of us who have faced darkness know better. Hope is not weakness, it is work. It is a decision. It is something you wake up and choose even when the world gives you every reason not to. And that is why starting your day with hope is an act of quiet defiance. It is saying to the chaos, you will not define me. It is saying to your fears, you may visit, but you will not rule. When we begin our mornings with hope, we create a different rhythm in our lives. We speak to ourselves not with judgment, but with understanding. We do not demand perfection from the day, only presence. We greet others not with suspicion, but with a willingness to see the good before we assume the worst. And slowly, that attitude begins to shape our actions, our relationships, our work. The energy we bring into the world becomes the energy that returns to us. But hope must be cultivated. It does not grow in neglect. It grows when we protect it, when we feed it with small acts of faith, taking care of our body, showing kindness to a stranger, speaking with integrity when it would be easier to stay silent. These things may not change the world overnight, but they remind us that we are not powerless. And power, my friends, does not always roar. Sometimes it breathes. I have seen people carry hope in the most unlikely places, in prisons, in hospitals, in homes filled with sorrow. And what I've learned is this: hope is not dependent on circumstance. It is dependent on vision. It is born from the refusal to let today's pain write tomorrow's story. That is why your morning matters. Because if you start your day choosing to believe that something good is possible, then that belief becomes your lens. And through that lens, even difficulty becomes a teacher, not a sentence. Many of us wake up and reach first for our phones, for the headlines, for the outside world. And what do we find there? Often fear. Often division. We consume it before we've even remembered our own breath. That is why I say, begin with yourself. Begin with the quiet space before the world begins to speak. Fill it not with doubt, but with declaration. A few words of affirmation, a short moment of prayer, or a simple intention. Asterisk, today I will walk in peace. Today I will see the good. Asterisk, it may seem small, but it is powerful, because in that moment you are deciding what kind of world you will help create. You see, peace is not something we wait for. It is something we carry. And when we meet the day with that spirit, we don't just influence our own lives. We become light for others. Sometimes people ask me, how do I overcome the weight of everything around me? And I tell them this: asterisk, do not carry the whole world at once. Carry only your corner of it, and carry it well. Asterisk, let your mornings be the place where you gather that strength, where you remind yourself of your purpose, your values, your capacity to do good. Yes, there will be days when hope feels far, when even the sunrise seems tired, but that is when it matters most. That is when your commitment to rise, not just from sleep, but from despair, becomes the very proof that hope is alive in you. And in that rising, others find permission to do the same. So as you step into the day, ask yourself not what the world owes you, but what you choose to bring into it. Will it be fear, or will it be faith? Will it be bitterness, or will it be love? That choice, quiet, sacred, and yours alone, begins every morning. Let the dawn find you choosing hope.